Okay, we're going to do astrology.
Yes.
So now the question that we have is, do Jews believe in astrology? Yes or no? And what do Jews believe about astrology? So if we know the famous story of the sage, Rabbi Akiva, he had a daughter that was supposed to get married, and the astrologers came up and told him that your daughter is going to die on the day of her wedding. And of course he's like, okay, whatever. So they go on with their life, and the day of the wedding comes, and the next day comes, and nothing happened to the girl. And he's like, that's very interesting that astrologers were saying this. So he asked his daughter, he said, what did you do on the day of your wedding? So she said, I was sitting at the wedding, and I noticed there was a poor person sitting there without any food. And I told him to come over and eat my portion.
Because of this.
Right, to eat my portion. And then what happened? And then the next morning when she woke up, she noticed that in her, she has like this special pin that she puts through her hair. When she took out the pin and put it into the wall in the morning, she took out the pin, and behind the pin there was a snake, a poisonous snake. So the snake was supposed to bite her, but because she did something, right, a mitzvah, very good, she was saved. So in other words, here we see astrologers saying this. So now we have a question. Let's go through the history of the Jewish people and talk about a little bit about astrology. So what in general, what does astrology mean? And what does astronomy mean? Anybody?
Astrology and astronomy?
Yeah, what's the difference?
Astronomy is the study of the stars.
Right, the planets and the stars, exactly, and the galaxies. And what is astrology?
How they affect us.
The meaning of all the different shapes of the different planets and the different galaxies, how they're shaped. Okay, that's the study of astrology. So that's the difference. Astronomy, we're just studying the planets themselves, and here we're studying how they work with each other, etc., etc. So let's go back to the beginning of creation and think about what happened when God created the world. We understand that there were many different days of the week. Okay, so first day of the week was Sunday. What did God create on the first day? The light and the dark. Good, the light and the dark. And usually a person that's born on Sunday, he is a black and white kind of person. He's a leader. So he's either very black or very white. What does that mean? He's either an amazing leader or a terrible leader that hurts people or whatever he does. Okay, so those are the people that are born on Sunday. The people that are born on Monday, what happened on Monday? The water separated. It separated between the heaven and the earth. The water was, God made a firmament, a separation. So a separated means basically a person that's born on Monday usually has a lot of anger, or he likes to be on his own, like seclusion. He likes his own life. Nobody bother me. Okay? Because it's separating of the waters. Okay, a person that's born on Tuesday, Tuesday was the day of vegetation, when the vegetables, the trees, all that was born, was created. So that kind of person that's born on Tuesday is either wealthy, meaning he has abundance of things, or he's promiscuous, which is kind of a little weird, right? Because that means he has an abundance of ta'avot, which means he's very addictive. That's the kind of person, okay? So it's vegetation, meaning abundance of a lot of the same thing. Okay, so that's Tuesday. What about Wednesday? Wednesday, the sun, the moon, and the stars were born on that day. So what happens? The person who's born on that day is bright, intelligent, and very quick-witted. Okay, because sun, moon, stars, it's all bright things that are very bright. Then we have Thursday, where we have the fish and the crawling insects. that's the 5th day, and they usually those people, they love to give a lot. They give a lot of charity. They benefit a lot of people. They're called gomel chasadim, people that are beneficiaries, right? They give people things. So that's the day on Thursday. Because what's fish? Fish is something that multiplies, gives. Okay? On Friday, the man and the woman were born. That means that people are more religious, more manly-like, not so much as animalistic-like, even though the animals were born in that day too. So those people, they seek out to do mitzvot. They always want to help other people. They always want to do something religious, like religious fervor. They want to do something like beneficial on the level of a person. And then, if you're born on Saturday, you have a tendency towards holiness, because it's Shabbat. So the people born on Saturday are more holy-like kind of people. Were you born Saturday? Okay, so we see all these days of the week, but we also should know that you can take the same thing and elevate it, or the same thing and make it lower. So you can take, let's say, the Sunday, you can be a great person or a terrible person. The Monday, you can be an angry person or a secluded person. But sometimes a person that's secluded, maybe it could be a good thing that you're secluded, that you put yourself into a space separated than other people. Maybe you want to study more, maybe you want to do more things, and eventually come out and help others. I mean, that's possible too. And Tuesday, a person who's wealthy, he can either do good things or bad things. So each day you can take and you can utilize those things for either good or bad. So that's the beginning of creation. Then, as we go through creation, what happens? The people, they're looking at God and saying, God is so far away. Let us use the messengers of God, and why don't we pray to the messengers of God to help us to pray to God? So they start to pray to the sun, to the moon, to the stars, and believe that all these things have its own power. Because first you pray to the sun to pray to God. But what happens when the sun goes down and there's no sun in the sky? Then you pray to what? Wednesday, yeah. So then you'll pray to something
It's okay.
very intelligent, very bright. We need to use your head for good purposes. Okay. So if we look at the idea of so then what happens when the sun goes away? What do? Then we say, okay, we'll make something that looks like the sun. We'll create something that looks like the sun, and we'll pray to that. So what happens after a few generations? People forget about God. They remember the sun, moon, and stars, and they forget about the sun, moon, and stars, and they remember what? The little thing, the idols that they created for themselves. So that's how they slowly went away from God. And this is also how slowly we go away from the point that God is the one that controls the world, not the stars, not the ways of the stars, not how the stars are formed. God, in a spiritual realm, makes the stars be formed in a certain way so that it looks that way in astrology. See where I'm getting at? Okay. Then we look at the next part of the Torah, and we go to the part where Abraham, this is what you learned today about Lech Lecha. So God tells Abraham is the one that brought the people back to God. He started to tell people, why are you believing in the idols? They don't have any power. Only God has the power. And he was the first person that God, after he recognized God, God said to him, your children will be great. I will make a nation out of your children because you're the one that recognizes me. So what does God tell to Abraham? Leave your birthplace. Lech lecha, go to yourself. Go to who you really are, your soul. Who you really are as a person. Then me'artecha, from your land. What do you mean go from your land? Go from all the things that make you more physical, down to earth. All the things from the land, the people that surrounded you in your life, all their habitual things, You don't need to listen to their habitual things. You need to go and make yourself some changes. Then it says, Mimoladiticha, from the place that you were born, meaning from your inborn traits. Go away from all those inborn traits. Yes, you were born. You have certain things that God gave you as a present. But take those things and go out of those things and make them elevate those things. Utilize the things that you were born with. And then, mi beis avicha, from your father's home. What does it mean, your father's home? What your parents taught you. Go from all of those different things and you go to a place that I will show you. It's all about making yourself understand, yes, I have this talent, I have this character, I have something else. Yes, I'm born in this sign, I'm born on that sign. Yes, you're born with all those signs, but what do you need to do? You need to go above those signs. That's why Abraham was taken where? Out of the stars. When Abraham came, at the beginning, the astrologers told Abraham he will never have children. Why? Because he was born under the sign of Mars, and Mars is not a very good sign, and so therefore it was shown in the astrology place that he wasn't going to have children. And so he told that to God. I'm not supposed to have children. So God said, I will bring you on top of the stars, higher than the stars. And when you're higher than the stars, you don't go by the stars. I could make that you could have children too. So the stars is something that's a sign, but it doesn't mean it's set in stone. It's never set in stone. The same thing if we see later on in Egypt. Remember the story with the Pharaoh? What did the yes?
So I understand all of that, but why then do, like, I guess, bad things happen to good people?
Okay.
And why even, like, Jews suffer and others don't?
Okay. So the question, first of all, it's a very long answer for that, why good things happen to bad people. There's a whole discussion on that.
And also vice versa.
Also vice versa. We can go to that. We can talk about that in another time.
Okay.
But just in short, basically, that each person comes to this world with a different mission. And the only way that we could do our mission is by going through certain things in our lives. What things we go through, that I can't tell you why exactly you go through certain sufferings. But there's a reason that only God knows why certain people go through certain things, only because they have to reach their goal and their mission. And that's what helps with their missions. Because sometimes if you look back at certain things that happened to you that weren't so great, you can see that you grew out of them, that you become a much more meaningful person, a much more purposeful person. And you see changes in your life and you look at it and go, wow, that really taught me an amazing thing and this helps me for my future. But I'm not saying about good and bad or whatever it is, I'm just saying in general. Mm-hmm. But we can go into that at another time, but thanks for asking that question. Mm-hmm. So going now further, the story with Pharaoh, when he saw that Moses was going, that the Redeemer of the Jewish people was going to be punished by water, he threw all the baby boys into the water because he saw that by the astrology. And if we know that later on in the place called Main Meriva where there was water, Moses instead of talking to the rock, which God told him to talk to the rock, he hit the rock and therefore he couldn't go into Israel. So he was punished by water, but he wasn't punished. In other words, it was very vague at what they saw. They saw water, but they didn't understand what it meant exactly. So even when they look at astrology, it's kind of vague. They can't really see the whole picture. Okay, so that's the story with the astrologers with Moses. But then there's also another part that when the Jewish people were supposed to go out of Egypt, Pharaoh says, where are you going? They said, we're leaving Egypt. He says, but I don't want you to take the kids. And he said, why not the kids? We want to take everyone. So he answered them, Ra'u ki ra'a neged penechem. I see that there is bad. The star called bad is right in front of you. If you go out, you're going to be killed. You're not going to make it. And this is what he said. He said, I not only see the bad, but I also see the blood. And he thought that they'd be all killed. Meanwhile, what really happened at the end? The people that didn't have a circumcision during the 40 years that they were in the desert, at the end of the 40 years, they all were circumcised. And that was the blood that Pharaoh saw. So even whatever they do see, it doesn't mean that it's exactly the way it's supposed to be. So that's basically in the Torah what it talks when it talks about astrology in the Torah. But what does the name Mazel mean? When you say Mazel Tov?
It's luck.
Luck. Mazel means luck. But really it doesn't mean luck. We think of it as Mazel Tov, good luck, but the word Mazel comes from the word nozel, which means to drip. That means that things from heaven come down drip by drip. Every time we do something to deserve this extra mazel, meaning the dripping of the good stuff, we get this little drip bit by bit. But the interesting thing is the Jewish people their connection is straight to God. Whereas the 70 nations, their connection is to their angel. So whereas a Jew goes straight to God, he doesn't have angels in between, a non-Jew will have an angel that will be his representative. So we need to know that it's completely different for us because Ata Bacharta Mikola Amim. We were the chosen people. Like it says the chosen people. What does it mean we're the chosen people? If we go back to Abraham, we understand that Abraham was chosen. Why? Because he was the first one that really connected to God. And so he was chosen. His nation was chosen. Chosen could be a good thing. Chosen could be a bad thing. The good part about chosen is that we have more privileges. But the bad part about chosen is that we have 613 commandments, whereas non-Jews only have 7. So there's a good and a bad to everything. So that's...
Not 10?
No, they have 7. 10 is 10 commandments. The 10 commandments were given to the Jewish people. Right. 7 are the Noahide laws. You know what the Noahide laws are? Not to eat, not to eat animals alive. Okay, which some people eat live animals.
This is Jewish.
No, this is non-Jewish.
Not Jewish. 7. Right?
7. The second one is not to curse God. The third one is not to steal. The fourth one is to have judges in your city, like to have a moral system. Okay. The fifth, wait, is the fifth? Yeah, fifth one is not to kill. The sixth one is not to commit adultery. And the 7th one is not to serve idols. So those are the 7 Noahide laws. Before Noah, there were 6. Why it's called the 7 Noahide laws? Because Noah was given an extra law, which is not to eat live animals. Because before the time of Noah, nobody ate animals. It was only vegetation. Once Noah came out of the ark, they gave permission to people to start eating animals.
Wow.
Because they were in a lower level, they needed the vitamins, they didn't have enough vegetation at that point. So God gave permission to eat animals, but he said not to eat them live. In other words, not to go like they do in Chinatown. They eat the frogs, and I don't know what else they eat. But it's really
Abraham
disgusting.
came after Noah, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Noah was the first human that was saved after the flood. So everyone came from Noah. First everyone came from Adam, and everyone came from Noah. And Avram was the first person to recognize God.
Okay.
After all this, after going from Adam, it went down, 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 and then it went, after Noah, it went down again, and then Abraham brought it back again.
Okay.
Into the world. Okay, so
just a quick one.
Yeah.
But all the sacrifices that were done with with animals to the god. So God was allowed to eat animals, or that was all.
No, God doesn't eat the animals. You know why?
God doesn't
Why do
eat.
you sacrifice animals?
Why
Because you're really supposed to sacrifice yourself. Because it's your animal soul.
It's symbolic. No one
It's
is
symbolic.
eating
No one's eating it. No, it does not. This is not paganism.
Okay.
So
I know, but paganism believes that there is such a thing
Right.
that God eats the animals. No,
Sorry,
God doesn't
okay,
eat the animals.
okay.
The reason the animal, first of all, the animal has to be slaughtered in a specific manner that it
Right.
doesn't feel the pain. Because if you give pain to the animal, you're not allowed. It's not even good for a sacrifice. And the sacrifices, part of the sacrifices were burned, and part of them were eaten by the Kohen, which is the priests. Okay, in the temple. They ate like part of it, a part of the animals. So that was basically their food because they didn't work except for service for the Jewish people. And they were also the teachers. So that's how they got their food. Yeah. It's just very interesting because when you think about sacrifices, you always think about, oh my goodness, it's a terrible thing. But if you think about the reasoning behind it, it's nothing to do with killing an animal. It has to do with sacrificing yourself. Like I should have been, not because I did something wrong, I come inside and I sacrifice an animal and I say, okay, so instead of me, the animal dies, but the animal gets elevated. It's not, its soul gets elevated too.
Right.
And why for Yom Kippur, why a chicken? Why not like, I don't know, a goat or something that we...
I think it was a much later, much later in the shtetl they started it. It wasn't, it's not going back many years.
Okay.
It was just started later, so I guess they had a lot of chickens and that was just the time. No. It's actually just, it's a custom that's only a couple of hundred years old.
Oh, wow.
So it's not something that was going very far.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. That's a whole nother discussion. Not everybody believes the doing of the chicken.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. So also, if we know that there's also energy in months, we know that it says that when the month of Av comes, we get less. We lessen our happiness, and we know when the month of Adar comes, we make our happiness more. What does it mean? Like if you want to have a court case, try to do it in the month of Adar.
I'd like to know that every month. What is it? That would be good.
Yeah. Well, Adar is a month that's a good month. It's a very good month.
When is the Adar?
Adar is around March. Yeah, and actually there's 2 Adars this year because it's a leap year, so we have an extra Adar.
An extra month?
An extra month, yes. An extra month.
Usually leap year is like an extra day, no?
What?
Isn't it not? Leap year, it's like an extra day usually.
Leap year is usually an extra day in the
English,
sun,
yeah.
right? But the moon, you have to remember that it's further back from the sun. So every certain amount of years, I think it's about 2 or 3 years before, they have to add an extra month so that it catches up.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be nice to know, Mattie, about every month. Like I just find out the last year, then in the months of July, 3 weeks, you're not supposed to travel and things.
Right.
So it would be good.
Well, we'll let you know as we go along. Okay. So this month we know is the month of Cheshvan. We talked about it when you weren't here. That Cheshvan is a month that there's no holidays. So it's not the greatest month either. But it still has some good things in it, like it has the beginning of the flood and also the end of the flood. So, and it's also the month of Mashiach, the temple to be rebuilt, because it was also told that the temple will be rebuilt in this month.
Wow.
So it's like
So the best prayers
Yeah.
to
Yeah, it's a good time to pray and
for
take
Israel and
right for Israel and all that kind of stuff. Why? Because you're coming from the month of Tishrei, which was all holidays, and you're bringing all this energy into the next month.
So Tishrei is a good month.
Yes, definitely.
But people constantly say Mashiach now, and it could be like January, so we're above that, right?
Yes,
it doesn't
right.
have to come in this
right.
month.
It doesn't have to be in this month, but it does say that the temple will be rebuilt in this month.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't mean the Mashiach's coming in this month. Mashiach
Okay.
can come anytime, any day, any moment. Okay, so that's another thing. And also, we know that the Maharal says that every Friday night, 2 angels come home with you. One is the good angel, which is the angel of Jupiter, which is called Tzedek in Hebrew, which means righteous. Jupiter is the planet of righteous. And the other is the bad angel, which is the angel of Moadin, which is Mars. And we know that Mars is not the greatest planet.
Wow.
Why is that?
Why? Are you born in the month of the...
I don't know. I think I have to read.
Mars has been visible in the sky for like a month now.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. Maybe it's ready to be elevated. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? You could always take the good. Like, okay, so the Mars, the idea of Mars, if someone's born under the hour that Mars is more, in the sky or whatever, so usually that person usually has to do with either being a murderer Or they can take that same trait. Wait a second, they can take that same trait. Just a minute, they take that same. Listen.
I'm not sure.
But listen a second. You can take the same trait and become a shochat, or become a moel. So or become a doctor. See? So you have that trait of Mars, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person. You can use the same trait to positive or to negative.
I always liked Mars growing up.
Yeah. So maybe that's something good. Maybe you should become a doctor.
Maybe. Or a murderer.
Or what? Or a murderer. That we won't even think about that. So anyhow, so those two angels come home with you. And if they see a beautiful table for Shabbat and everything looks clean and nice, so the good angel says, may this be every week like this, and everyone answers amen. And if it's not so good, then the bad angel will say, well, may this be every week like this, and everybody has no choice but to say amen. So make sure that on Friday night your house looks nice and clean, and a beautiful tablecloth, and kiddush, and whatever it is. So it looks pretty.
Say amen.
And make sure to say amen, of course. And that's why on Friday night, between 6 and 7, a lot of people don't make Kiddush on red wine, because that's the time of Mars on Friday night.
Only on red wine, yeah?
Yeah, only red wine.
How
yeah.
about
Only
wine?
red wine. What about something in other liquors?
It doesn't matter. It's just specifically red wine. With Mars, somehow it doesn't have a very good connection. Yeah, I don't know exactly the details behind it, but I know that spiritually it's not that
But
good.
white wine you can.
White wine is not a problem. It's only red wine, because red wine is actually elevated. It's usually the higher level wine, and usually Friday night you want to make it on red wine.
But usually everybody's drinking red wine. And
Right, but not between 6 and 7.
so even if it's a
So you make Kiddush either earlier.
I see.
You can make it at 6 o'clock before it starts, or after 7. No. Okay. So it's somehow the spiritual counterpart part of that planet. So in other words, the planet is not the bad planet. It's that spiritual counterpart of that planet which gives it that spiritual energy. So in other words, everything's coming from God. It's not just like the way we think. So let's go further on this.
One question that I always wondered, like, what's the point of having such a huge universe? Like, why all these planets? Like, why can't he have just made an Earth and that's it?
We're talking about God. We're not talking about us. Us people cannot grasp it. You know why? Because our minds are finite. We don't have the infinite grasp of the whole universe. If you were infinite, you wouldn't say that it was big. You wouldn't say that it was so vast. You wouldn't say that there's so many different parts to it, because you would already see everything at once.
Yeah, but there's like no commentary on it or anything.
Commentary on what? On the vast universe?
Yeah, like what's the
there's
point
a lot
of
of
it?
there's a lot of Kabbalistic stuff on that. You have to remember that God has everything in place, and everything is perfectly put in nature, so that it runs a way God wants it to run. So it's all within nature. He has this whole system that he created. And therefore, let me just go through this a little more so that you can get this idea. So therefore, one shift of anything can change the whole world. So if we make one little shift and we do something a little bit different, like we said the story with Rabbi Akiva's daughter, we can change everything really quickly. So that's the whole point. The point is that we are creators. We are created in the image of God. So therefore we are creators too. So we also know that there's different groups. There's 4 different groups. There's people that are more earthy people. There are people that are more water flowing kind of people. Then there's the air people, right? And then there's the what did I miss?
Fire, no?
Fire. There you go. The fiery people.
And airy. Airy?
Airy, yeah. Airy people are, the air. You know how air works. Okay, and some different people that are born in different months, they're connected to those things. Like the Aish is Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. That's the fire months. Then you have the air, that's June, which is Tu'umim. Tu'umim are the twins. Maznayim, which is the scales, and the Aquarius, right? Those are the air people.
That's
and then,
air.
Right. And then you have what? Then you have the earth people, which is the Shar, which is, I don't know how to say
Aries.
that. Aries, right? Then the Virgo, like I am. And then the Gedi, what is that one?
Pisces.
Not Pisces, no. Pisces. No, Pisces is water. Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio is water. And there's what? Capricorn. Capricorn, right? That's the earth ones. Okay. So we know that people that are born in the fiery, they're more hot, they're more perceptive, they decide things quickly, and then people that are more earthy, they're more calm, it takes them time. It's interesting because you have this traits inborn, but at the same time you could use those traits and you could make changes. Because I know I'm a Virgo and I'm very earthy, but at the same time I've changed a lot. Like I couldn't change one place to another. I've been moving all my life from one house to another, nonstop. And I say to myself, look, I'm supposed to be earthy. How could I be moving like that? Guess what? I changed a lot. It doesn't bother me as much as it did at the beginning. Why? Because you kind of work on yourself and you say, okay, I was very earthy. I used to like everything in order, perfect, and then I had 10 children. Then what happens, right? It's a big mess. You can't be like that anymore. You have to learn how to make those changes. So even if you're born with these traits, you can actually work on yourself and take those traits and use them to your best ability, but you don't have to be stuck with them. We're not stuck with anyone. That's why God said to Abraham, Lech lecha, go from yourself, from your fathers. That's from all the different traits you have, from the things that you learned from your parents, from the things that you learned from what? From your neighbors, the things that you were born with. All those things are nice. But you know what? You don't have to be stuck with it. We as Jews do not need to be stuck with our mazel. So we know that we have all these different things, and we have to understand one thing, that everything is from God. Everything we don't have a choice. What's the only thing we do have a choice? Is Yirat Shamayim. What is Yirat Shamayim? We know that we're born to be poor or rich. We're born to be happy or sad. We're born to all these traits we're inborn. But we are not stuck with them. And what does that mean? We can make changes by doing a mitzvah. When we do something extra special good, we can change certain things in our lives. That's our only choice. Our only choice is mitzvot. We don't have choices in anything else. We don't have a choice even who we're going to marry. That's not our choice. This is what God wanted. It's not our choice. You think it's your choice. It's not your choice. This was destined for you from the minute you were born. Your choice is whether you're going to do a mitzvah or not a mitzvah. God forbid.
So what does Yirat Shamayim mean?
Yirat Shamayim means fear of heaven.
Okay.
In other words, what you're going to do with it. Your fear of heaven, how you react to it. Okay? And it says, Ein mazel liyisrael. There's no mazel for the Jew. What does it mean, Ein mazel liyisrael? There's no mazel for the Jew. If you take the word Ein and you change it to Ayin mazel liyisrael, Ayin means zero mazel for the Jew. It doesn't affect the Jew. Ayin is also God. God is Ayin. Ayin means nothingness. Okay? There's nothingness when you talk about the mazel for a Jew. So don't look at the omens, because the omens are not going to help you. It doesn't help anybody. And I notice that many people, they go to different people and say, oh, I want this omen and this Kabbalistic thing and this thing and whatever. Yes, you do it, and what happens? It's just pulling some energies from above. But you're not going to the source. What's the source? God is the source. He's the source all the way up there. Our sources of pulling all this energy from all these different places doesn't really help us. What does it do? What does it do? What does pulling all these energies from other places do for you?
I think it gives us fragments of the whole picture.
Right,
that
it gives
we
us
get.
little pieces of the picture. So when somebody comes and says, okay, I see in the coffee that such and such is going to happen to you, blah, 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 they're pulling something that's so vague. They don't know what they're getting. This energy could be read two different ways. If someone says you're gonna be wealthy,
That's you're gonna end up wealthy. But what if somebody
but
say
what
then
does
you're
it
gonna
mean?
be poor?
Right? But if someone says we're gonna be poor, who says that's gonna happen? Because yes, maybe your mazel says wealthy or your mazel says poor. But what if you do something extra and you make that change? In 2 minutes, it's gonna make a change and completely change everything. 100% turnover. So that's why when you go to these Kabbalists that are not real Kabbalists, in other words, they say they're Kabbalists because they study Kabbalah. But you know what? The only kind of Kabbalist that you can go to is somebody who's been studying Torah all his life, that's been doing mitzvot all his life. Then you can say he's a Kabbalist. But there's so many people out there, they come and they say, oh, we're going to check your mezuzah and see what letters are on it. Or we're going to come and tell you, who you're going to marry, if you're going to be happy, or this and that. Those things are just pulling little pieces of energy. It's just pulling. Why? Because you can change that energy. Why? Because how did God create the world? How did he create the world? Words. Letters. 22 letters of the alphabet. He took it and moved the letters in all different directions. If you take the word of, which is aleph and bet, which means father, if you turn it around, it becomes ba, which means to come. It's not the same word anymore. It's completely changed. It has a whole different energy. To come and a father is completely different energies. And you take an aleph and a beis and you add a long nun to it, you get Evan, which means a stone. A stone is completely different. So every single letter was completely different. So we see that what do we have with letters? We have the three mothers. They're called the three mothers letters, which is the aleph, the men, and the shin, which is 3 different letters. What is those 3 letters? Aleph is from or. Aleph is from avir. Aleph means the what do you call it? Aleph comes from avir. Avir is wind, right? Mem is mayim, which is water, and the shin is esh, which means fire. So what are those 3 letters? They create what? Fire, water, and air. And those are the 3 elements taken with the earth, right? Taken with the earth that's the Yesodas, that's the foundation that God created the world, the Aleph, the Mem, and the Shin. And then we have 7 letters that are doubles, they're double letters, and then we have another 12 letters that are the mazalos, actually the mazel. Okay, the 12 mazel and the 7 major stars, right? 7 is the major stars. So in other words, God created the world in a certain way. Yes, he created all this mazel stuff, but it's all coming from him. He can manipulate it any way he wants. If he doesn't want it to be that way, it could be another way. But it's all up to us to bring those energies down in the right way. That's why he created man. He created a person to do what? To make a dwelling place for God down here. What do we do down here? What does it mean making a dwelling place for God? If we do a mitzvah, we're drawing down energy that would never be in this world if we didn't draw it down. So that's why God gave us all these mazals, all the different mazals, all the lucks, right? But he told us this. He says, I'm giving you all this. I'm giving you all these things in your life. Why? Because I want you to know one thing, that every person is born with the mazel to influence what? Their purpose in life. Because if I didn't have this mazel, I would never influence my purpose in life. It wouldn't give me all this extra things to be able to influence what do I need to do in this life. All my life, what talents, all these things come to one point. And this is the point that we need to understand, that we came to this world for a purpose. That we didn't come for nothing. We came to make a dwelling place down here. Just every single person. You know, when you're born, what does God say to you? You're important. You're important in this world. Why are you important? The whole world was created just for you. When you're born, God says the whole world was created just for you. Because each person is a whole world. Each person with its talents and his mazel is like a whole world. So you need to know that you all have a purpose here. Because when you're born, God says, I know why I created you. Because you are a whole world. You need to know that. And every single person is very important in this world.
So I know that, of course, like the Rebbe was obviously well versed in everything. I know stories of him saying like, "Don't get on this plane to one person," or like, "Don't go into politics." You know, like.
But he also told people to do certain mitzvot to continue on their life. So when someone would come to him, a lot of times he would say, "You need a vessel for your life." So let's say he would tell a person, "You need to put on tefillin," or another person he would say, "You need to give more tzedakah." Or a third person say, you have to light candles, etc., etc. Because in order to be able to get that mazel, you need to connect to something that is your purpose and why you are in this world. So yes, the Rebbe did know, because the Rebbe, don't forget, learned Torah all his life, so he was able to tap into more holiness than we can tap into. So he sees it in the holy world. He doesn't see it in the physical world. He doesn't see that there's a problem going on the plane in the physical world. He sees in the higher worlds that there is, in the holy part of the world, he sees that there is a problem with the plane. So you need to keep away from that because you need to be somewhere else. But if the Rebbe didn't tell that person not to go on the plane, the person wouldn't go on the plane either.
Did he
there would be some other
describe ever, like, did he physically see it or did he feel it? Like, how did he?
No, people ask him, like, how did you know? He says, I don't know. I just, this is what I see. So in other words, he didn't see it in the physical world that something will happen to the person. He saw it in the spiritual. It's not good for the soul to go to this place, or not good for the soul to be in this specific situation. And it doesn't mean whether the person's going to die or not die, because sometimes a person does die because it's the end of his life. You know, no matter what you do, or not. You know, like, you can pray for people. Sometimes they live and sometimes they don't. Does it affect the person? Yes, it definitely affects the person's soul when you pray for them, because it's elevating their soul.
Yeah.
Whether it actually saves them, sometimes yes, sometimes no, depending on what their mission is, and if their mission is accomplished.
Yeah. Many years ago, my son took, I think it's Tanakh, right? Tanakh course. So he was a teenager, but something that how he articulated to me was that each person is born with cornerstones, like milestones of their lives that they will hit anywhere, anyhow, right? So, like, I would assume like parenthood, motherhood, right? Something like that. But how you get there, it really is up to you. So you can.
So it's
get
not
there.
how you get there; it's how you react to getting there. In other words, you have a certain path. It's the way you deal with that path is what's going to be. Why? Because let's say something's going wrong and it's very difficult for you. If you walk around moping all day, then your path will be sad and it'll be very hard for you to do anything. But if you walk around happy and you find something good within it and you see the light at the end of the tunnel, or whatever you want to call it, then you will go. It'll be completely different for you. Your life will be different. So it's not exactly, in other words, we don't have choice. The only choice we have, like I said before, is a mitzvah or not a mitzvah. No other choice. Or an attitude, or not an attitude. So how do we react to whatever is happening to us?
So the challenges.
The challenges. How do we react to the challenges?
And how we are dealing with
How we deal with the
challenges.
challenge,
That's
yes.
how we
Yes.